Yo, what's up? What's up? So today, I'm trying to, be like as like real, like speaking from only my perspective as I can possibly fucking be. It's been difficult. I'll tell you what, it's been difficult. I've been noticing like sneaky things that the ego likes to do and stuff to stay hidden and shit like that. And I've been like, I don't know, I've been like fucking fleshing out my internal world, getting a lot of crap just like written down, like trying to see what's going on up in there, kind of. It's like I had this like mental shift. I had this mental shift. Yeah, I had this mental shift. I'm figuring I might as well share some of the process, cause like, yeah, it might be good for somebody else too. And yeah, it's been helping me, so yeah, it might be good this year. I don't know. I'm just doing it to do it. Probably for narcissistic supply or some shit, but shit, bro. Fucking, I'm sharing it. And so yeah, it's probably not interesting, but hey, maybe somebody can get something out of it. Maybe it'd be helpful for somebody else too. That'd be wonderful if that ended up being the case. That would be wonderful. But yeah. So basically, I've been struggling a whole big bunch trying to get real me. Yeah, like that's when it happens, like self-judgment. Yeah. And so like I've been trying to flesh out kind of what my ideal self is, and then like what my actual self is. And like I've been trying to find like that line where the ideal self and the actual self like are divided, if that makes sense. And like yeah, so it's like I realized while I was doing this, it's like my ideal self, my current ideal self, whereas before I really, if I'm being honest, before I would say from May and June, and April maybe. It's like I didn't really have an ideal self anymore. Like I felt like I kind of was. Like I had become my ideal self, and like I was basically just in like maintenance mode, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't striving to become my ideal self anymore. I was basically just like doing the practices that had gotten me there and like continuing to. And I didn't have this concept in my head of like a me that I wanted to be for a little while. It didn't last very long, but like, yeah, I was like totally content with who I was in the moment, with where my past had been, and with where my projected future was, and with all my positives, all my negatives, all my ideas of who I am and all this. It's like, yeah, I didn't have an idea of a way that it could be better. I was like good with, yeah. And maybe that's not great. Like maybe that's not like a good thing to not have an ideal self. Or potentially. The more pernicious thing that could have happened was I was basically living as if I was my ideal self when it was still my ideal self. And I just wasn't aware of this. And it resulted in a whole lot of like me stamping my actual self down. I'm pretty dang sure. Somewhere between those two, maybe. And like, yeah, but I do remember not really thinking about like this idea of like someone that I was trying to become, like someone on the inside. It was like for a little while there, it was just basically being me that's on the inside, like my highest self. I got to like be that for a while. And when I didn't really have this concept of ideal self. I had like, yeah. But yeah, I've realized that now, anyways, now what seems to be the case is what was my old concept of actual me has become what is in my mind now as my ideal self. And then there's actual me. And in my mind, actual me is, it's like this ideal self, but it's like stripped down quite a lot, if that makes sense. I'm gonna just be brutally honest with y'all. Like, I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat nothing. Like, my ego got pretty big, so fuck it. Yeah. Like, yeah. So, like, yeah. I'll let y'all fucking chill. So, like, my ideal self. It's gonna be fucking mirrored, but like, yeah. First word I put up there was Shiva. It's everything that I think of in my head that I associate with that part of me. So, like, yeah, straight up, fucking, I had the master meditator, fucking master manifester, fucking master musician, fucking perfect pitch. It's like all the shit that, like, a very narcissistic ego, like, I hate to say, like, yeah, and like egoless. I was egoless for a little while, but I wasn't egoless. It was just out of the way. But like, yeah. Like, yeah. It came back. But like, yeah. Full of personality, life, wisdom, fucking secure. I was for a little bit. For a little bit, I felt secure. For a little bit. For like 2 months, I felt secure in who I was. Comfortable in my body, comfortable in my circumstances, comfortable with my life, comfortable with where my friendships had gone, I'm comfortable with like my solitude, I'm comfortable with like it just being kind of I and I. Yeah, I was comfortable with that. I don't know where that went, but yeah, at least I thought I was. This is my ego, so like, yeah. And a teacher, you know, fucking, yeah, conscious, empathetic, creative, original, a free thinker, divinity incarnate. I mean, like, yeah, but that's not like ideal self. That's like given at birth to all of us. Like, anything that's a living thing is divinity incarnate. But like, yeah, I don't know, man. And like, it, like, yeah, like, yeah, and like, yeah. And then my actual self, Chad over here, got Piper right at the top there. And you can see I kind of noticed it's like split. Like, yeah, I'm guessing real me is somewhere in between these two. And my mind essentially had split who I am into an idealized version and a shitty version. So, like meditator, parentheses, hobby. Yeah. Creative type, just a musician. I put fucking full of something. Okay, full of ego, full of bitterness and sadness, unsure of like what she's doing in life, and directionless, kind of insecure. Lots of things that I want but don't feel like I have right now, which is like a plague for those of us that are trying to be like, a working heart, a boyfriend, just little things, man. Like, always running from the present, unconscious and judgmental. So yeah, I mean, like, I did see all of these things. I'm not gonna try and pretend. Like, I saw all of these in me, and I saw all of these in me I've seen in the past anyway. And I would never use the word master. I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna give this ego rationalization in defense real quick. I would never use the word master to describe my fucking self like that. But I was like outlining like in the bracket of the ego type thing. Like, yeah, and I've been told, I guess I had been called this by like presences on my inside and like beings that had come to visit me through my channels and shit, and they like told me that. And like at first it felt like very like ucky and very like I am not finna consider myself to be anything but a student. And eventually it like got to this point where like I guess I kind of felt like I was taking away credit from my higher self by like not saying these things and like not like allowing it to at least dwell on my insides, that like there was a part of me that was or is or whatever. But then again, yeah, I don't like it though, because like the word master like by necessity requires comparison. In order for something to be a master, something else has to not be. something else has to be a novice or intermediate or something like that. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to create my sense of who I am based on like comparative statements. Like that's exactly how you create a narcissistic, unhealthy ego. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to feed into that anymore. But I am defending, I guess, why I put those words, because if it was just up to my own perspective, like, yeah, I never would have seen myself as any of those things. But I figured if other things were calling my higher self that, it might be rude of me not to. It's kind of like, yeah, okay. That's kind of like, yeah, how it entered my mind like that and why it's stuck. Like why it's stuck in my mind. And like, yeah, I'm pretty darn sure that like real me is somewhere in between these two things, and also transcendent past them, because this is just the shit that I could like see during a very like kind of emotionally distorted kind of type vantage point. And yeah, it kind of developed like from there I went along like thinking about the things that my higher self had taught me. So like the things that I had learned from that part of me. Because I think after I put, after I wrote this page, after I wrote the my actual self, which this is just me but split in two. But yeah, after I wrote this one, and then there's this little section here about like things that I used to feel like, things that I feel like I used to have, that I feel like I don't have anymore. That was a bit eye-opening for me, I would say, because it was like, at first I struggled really hard to think of anything that like I used to have during the last time that I felt like happy and whole and like coherent and aligned. Like yeah, like I tried to make a list of the shit that I felt like I had then that I don't have right here, right now. Because like I was trying to get down, I was trying to like figure out, like get to the line of it. Like, what exactly is holding me back here? What exactly is it? Is it internal? Is it external? Is it something that I'm missing? Is it something that I feel like I'm missing and that's what's keeping me? Like, yeah, I'm pretty dang sure, but like, yeah. So like, yeah, I went through and thought of the things that I did have. And so, what I came up with, for anybody who's been fucking tagging along with this storyline, you might enjoy hearing this, I guess, but yeah, first one was Poe, which was my roommate's old cat, who I was buddies with. I miss the guy. Yeah, oh, I miss him, man. I miss that Poe stuff. Yeah, and yeah, it was a good chapter in my life. The chapter's been closed. He's gonna be in my heart forever, right? I can miss him, and that could just be like, yeah, like yeah. I don't need to cling to that, but like, yeah, I do miss Poe, and yeah, the second thing I put was validating peers and consciousness. And I kind of realized that, like, although in my head, like, from my perspective, throughout, like, that entire, I'd say, like, 6 months past, like, past Christmas Eve, for the one person who knows what the heck I'm talking about. But yeah, everything past Christmas Eve, like, I felt like I had been trying real hard to, like, just swallow my own perspective. I felt like I had been trying real hard to kind of move away from outside influence. So, like, move away from, I didn't want to be bothered and I didn't want to be watched. That's how it felt. Like, I wanted to be alone. And I guess, the thing that made me feel validated about peers, which, yeah, I'm pretty dang sure, like, the thing that made me feel validated about the presence of peers was always when I felt like I was doing really well. But I felt like I was, like, kicking butt and, like, making a lot of music and, like, it was sounding good and, like, I was meditating and, like, I was channeling some, like, wisdom and, like, shit like that and, like, talking to myself in my room and shit. Like, anytime I'm doing well and I'm kind of noisy about it, and yeah, I guess I kind of felt like, yeah, whenever I was doing real well, it felt like they wouldn't leave me the fuck alone. That's what it felt like. It would feel like, I don't know, like, yeah, like anytime I was like aligned to myself and not fucked up about something and just like enjoying life, like all of a sudden they'd be down in the basement way more. All of a sudden there would be like, and I don't need to feed into this much, but like, yeah, like a bunch of zippery coats in the washing machine downstairs, which is where my computer was and like where I meditated at and shit. And like sometimes it would just get set to like 200 minutes with a whole bunch of zippery clothes in them, and they would just be like kind of going, and it would get my, like, you know, I had well, I don't know if you knew this. I'm pretty sure you knew that I had autism, or at least like hypersensory needs and shit like that. And it would make it so that I would get like irritated at him, and he would be the vector of my attention would get directed towards Diego. Okay, I'm just saying that. And I noticed a whole lot of ways once I went back and thought about it, like a whole lot of ways when I was doing well that I would see the ways in which they would shape the situation to make it so that I could not ignore them. So like, yeah, like, just so that said, like, I didn't give a shit about compliments because I never heard compliments from them, like, fuck it, ever, until the very, very end. It was actually right when I moved out here, like, in my own noggin, like, that's where I would start to hear, like, good things. But like, the validation, it would be like reverse validation. Like, if they were bothering me more and if I was getting fucked with more, like, I knew I was doing something right. I knew I was doing something right, man, and I knew I was pissing somebody off, and like, shit, and like, hey, the powers that be or whatever, and like, hey, and like, I guess, for sure, I could see a way where like that would create like this, and I did write this down here as well. I did write this. I could understand how that would create like this fuel to continue doing what I had been doing. So like the meditations, the practice, the regiment, the adherence to it, the never leaving the house and all that shit, I could see kind of like a huge underlying motivator for that being like this idea of like competition. Like competition, straight up. And I didn't even know, like, this is all very background to me, and like I kind of like, I would like, yeah, it wasn't present in my awareness much for like most of the times that I was feeling real good about life. Like, it wasn't what I was thinking about for as much as I could manage. Like, anytime I would start thinking about one of my roommates, usually in some kind of like, why the fuck don't they just, like, why don't they move the fucking couch and shit, why the fuck is it right in front of my shit? Yeah, I would usually like catch that internal dialogue and kind of be like, you know, it doesn't do any good to blame others. It's just weighing you down, and it's not affecting them one way or the other to sit there and blame, like, inside your own body. It's not affecting them one way or the other. So it's only holding you down to hold on to the grudge. And so I'd always try and get myself to let go of that shit. And like to find ways in which I could see the unity. You know what I mean? It's like see the ways in which I'm not that different. And see the ways in which they're not that different. And usually that would result in some kind of internal peace. Like minimizing those separations, if that makes sense. So like ways in which I could conceivably pump myself up and pump them down. Yeah. Because think about it, dude. I mean, like, the only reason I probably felt like I had to compete like that, and the only reason I fucking felt like I had something to prove was because I felt lesser than. And who made me feel lesser than? Was it him? No, it was my ego. And it's the second arrow, and it's the one that actually hits. Like, yeah, it wasn't him, it was my ego. And yeah, it's like, yeah, now that competition ain't there, it's like, yeah, finding the motivation to be able to do like a lot of that stuff is like harder, because I guess essentially I was using the perception of others to enhance my self-reflective capacity. And it was in a way that I didn't, like, it seemed like a burden when it was going on. Like, the whole time I was there and all that, like, whenever I was aware, like, it's like a meta-awareness of myself like that. like, I was always aware that there was somebody watching me. And so it was like this kind of, I don't know, I started to behave as if somebody was always watching me. And eventually I stopped caring whether or not somebody was watching me. And I started just being real me, regardless of if somebody was watching me or not. But it was like that understanding that like there was always somebody fucking watching me. It created this fuel to want to give them a fucking good show then. Like, basically. Not just to give them a good show. It's like if they're gonna be watching me constantly and if they're gonna be in my head and shit and if they're gonna be bothering me and all this, it's like I wanted to, I guess, compensate for that. Something like that. It was like some ego related thing like that. It was like, because y'all had something that obviously like I wanted, like, an intimate relationship, and y'all had something that I felt like I was lacking in, and I felt like all my friends had, you know. I felt very lonely, and I felt like kind of an outcast, and I felt like kind of weird, and I felt like kind of like a loner, and I felt like this kind of went against like who I am at core, and I was basically living like that. And I decided I needed to, I guess, like compensate for like, like straight up. Like it felt like Diego had all of the social life and had all of the like support and like the friends and the loved ones. And and I felt like I had kind of nothing. And so I had to, I guess this is what I was doing, was creating a life for myself without anybody else. It's like, okay, that's what they got. Fine. Like, life ain't a competition. These are things that I'm missing in my life. You know, he has. And that's fine. But it did make me aware of it, man. It made me aware of it. And it would get at me sometimes. It would get at me. And I would compensate for those feelings, I think. Those feelings of being an outcast, essentially. Of being like a social reject. It's like somewhere along the way I like decided like if I'm gonna be a social reject, then I'm just gonna like go all the way with it and like not give a fuck about what anybody might think and like just kind of live out my fucking egoic dreams, I guess. And I kind of did, but and it was fruitful, like high key, like it was fruitful. And like I made a whole bunch of music, learned a whole fucking lot about myself. I saw myself do some things that I never think I was ever gonna be capable of for as long as I fucking live, and I saw myself do them. And I'm glad I did. However, like it would account for quite a lot, like kind of this feeling that I had lost something that was like key to my growth. I think it was, and it was the shortcoming I had as well, but like a needing to win, like a need to win, to be the one who comes out on top, to be right, to be the more abundant one, whatever the fuck. Don't you know? And like it's been very tricky for me because it very much, to me, from my perspective, seems like there's a real Shiva, and the real one's the one that like has all the wisdom and like fucking has been helping me throughout my whole life and like, you know, drops all the knowledge and shit on me and stuff and has the love. This is the real one. And then it feels like there's a fake one. And the fake one like completely drowns out the real one. And that fake one, like, I remember like the real one, the real me, like not giving a shit about like egoic attachment. Like straight up. Like the real one. The real one didn't give a fuck about what anybody thought. The real one didn't give a fuck about like holding on to any one like bit of consciousness or the Godhead or my body or anything like that. It didn't care. It didn't care what you called it. It didn't care like that. It doesn't care what name you use. It doesn't care like any of that shit. And that's the real one. The real one like is like the teacher, the loving one. And then there's this other one. There's like 3 beings. There's the real Shiva, the real Piper, and then the ego. Like, that's what it seems like anyway. And yeah, like yeah, the real one, I know the real one, at least to me. I don't know if it's like actually like the Hindu god Shiva or whatever the fuck. I ain't saying none of that. That's always a matter of opinion, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. I knew there was a real one. I knew there was a real one, and I knew that there was a fake one. And it was hard for me because I could not conceive of a way. I couldn't pull apart the intermeshing between the one that had been constructed through egoic attachment and the one that was really just like sitting right there and like just like yeah, I couldn't like pull those two apart in a way. Like it was like I was very I was like borderline splitting, very black and white thinking. Like I constantly tried to I was trying to pick between Piper and Shiva, but it would always break my brain because I knew there was like a real one, and the real one had like a whole bunch of goodness and shit. And so like it felt like deeply. It felt like and feels like every time I go down that path that like if I were to throw away Shiva, I'd be throwing away my higher self. And I'd be throwing away like basically like me. But there's also Piper, who is the myself, the one in my sacral chakra. And that me, I'm pretty damn sure, it's been hard for me to tell, dude. Especially with like chakra swapping, it gets me wondering like if it's just like my mom's sacral chakra in me or some shit like that. I don't think so, but yeah. And yeah, I know that one's real too. And that one has like a different, like it's a fractalization of the one perspective that I am, like as this being. But I could tell that there was like a distinction between the part of me that I understood as the Piper and the part of me that I understood as the real Shiva. The real one's the one that's in here. The fake one's the one that's up here. Just saying. And yeah, like fuck it. And yeah. And like yeah, I couldn't tell like I very distinctly felt like there was something about like what had transpired in the last like 2 to 3 months that like I needed to be understanding, and I needed to either like to not perpetuate any unhealthy patterns going forward into the future, or to stop like shoving down good patterns because I had become afraid of them, or like to perpetuate some ultimate victim narrative or something like that, which I'm not the ultimate victim. Like at the very least I'm a survivor, and probably in a more balanced perspective, like I'm a person, and like everybody goes through shit, and like I've been through serious trauma, but life is traumatizing at the same time. And like I am responsible for my mental health, and I'm responsible for my internal state, and I'm responsible for helping this human being out. And okay, I gotta keep that in mind. And like I guess I'm thinking like it was something in me. There's something in me like led to all this shit happening. Led to it. But one, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, because it seems like it's been doing the Shiva thing, like burning off the dead wood, even if it's painful. You already know. It's good for you. And yeah, and like yeah, I don't know. I felt very stuck. I felt very stuck spiritually. I felt very stuck kind of physically-ish, and I felt very, very stuck on like a soul level. And I couldn't understand like like I kept trying to find ways to make it other people's fault, right? Like I kept trying to find ways to make that present circumstance, or I guess what has been my present circumstance, I kept trying to find ways to make that someone else's fault. And like, it makes sense because like a BPD ego works the same way that like a narcissistic ego works, except its supply, the borderline's supply, is a different type of supply than the narcissist's supply. If you're a narcissist, then your supply is, I'm so great. Dude, look, I'm fucking, I'm the best shit ever. Like, yeah, that's narcissistic supply. Aggrandizement, putting others down and raising you up in a way that makes you seem bigger, better, stronger, whatever. And a BPD ego, how it works, it's like the other direction. It's like if cluster B would be the yin yang, even though there's a third one. Okay, I think it's antisocial. Yeah, it's like a yin yang, and like BPD is the yin form, and narcissism, like grandiose narcissism, is the yang form of the same kind of personality disorder. I guess the same like configuration issue. And I guess that would make sense why borderline manifests so much more in women. Like, I don't know, I'm speculating at this point. But anyways, what a borderline supply is feeling like the ultimate victim. It's feeling like the ultimate victim. So like life wasn't just hard. Life was super fucking hard. But I made it through. Life was super fucking brutal. Shit was so bad. But I did it. Against all odds, bird with a broken wing and shit. That's the borderline ego. The borderline ego is the one that feels better about itself by turning itself into a victim, no matter the scenario, no matter the severity, and no matter what it is. Turning itself into a victim and turning the others into perpetrators. And it's a very subtle way. It's a subtle way of putting others down and raising yourself up. It's a very subtle way. Because in your head, right, you might be thinking like, I'm the victim though. Like, they had all the power and they put me down and those motherfuckers and all this. But it's a subtle, sneaky way of raising you up. The poor, innocent, never done nothing wrong to nobody victim. And them, the bad, evil, mean, only hates other people type characterizations, both of which are obviously heavily split, and okay. And I've been saying this. I've been understanding it a little bit more. And I've been understanding that, like, the narrative, essentially, that I've been feeding myself. The narrative, my victim narrative, I think has been a huge part of what has been keeping me stuck. And I've noticed that, like, every time I start to think about that, like to question or at least ponder upon my ego's victim narrative, it always gets quite scared. And it always gets this feeling in it of like, yeah, but it's true though. I played a part in it, and like, yeah, I gotta do shit about it, and like it's my job to fix it, but this is how it happened though. And yeah, maybe. But it puts you into a hell of a position. So like my victim narrative, right? It's just this page, and then I played devil's advocate, right? Victim narrative, devil's advocate, and then I tried to find the balanced perspective. And like, I was reasonably successful at that, but not really, to be honest. It's like, hey, like the victim narrative, like, hey, it's basically just blaming, like, so shit's been kind of going downhill since the 4th of July, yeah? Shit's been going downhill since the 4th of July. That's kind of when the big shift happened. It was like everything was going fucking great along my spiritual path and shit. Up until it hadn't like purely been. Like, there's been many ups and downs, quite a lot like how this one has been. Many. However, from the period of like April and May and June, shit was going fucking swimmingly. Shit was going great. And on the 4th of July, everything changed. On the 4th of July, everything changed. It was like my final Kundalini exam for the little awakening sequence that I've been going through. The little. And yeah, fucking whatever, dude. Like, yeah, it's just another one. Like, this Betty. And like, yeah, I had, yeah, it's true. I had, after the 4th of July, like, I don't know, man. It was my final exam, my final Kundalini exam for that period. And on that day, I kind of told my parents, right? I kind of told them that this was going on, and I had been including them. And like, it was probably a big mistake, but I had been including them, like, telling them what had been happening, and like asking them questions, like, did y'all know? Like, did y'all fucking know? They did, but and they totally fucking did. But yeah. Anyways, yeah. After the 4th of July, after that Kundalini exam, from my perspective, it felt essentially like, looking back on it, like my sacral chakra got fucking swapped out. And like I was getting just fucking messed with for the whole fucking thing, and I was like wide open, so like it was easy for them. And like, yeah. And then like I went inside and I like tried to get it around and shit. I remember like I was out, like, yeah, I'm not gonna go get into the whole fucking story, but like I was sitting out back and I was trying to get it around for a fat minute. And I remember like laying on the fucking deck. It was like fucking 89 degrees out. I was laying on the back deck, like spread eagled and shit, like staring at the sun, bro. Yeah, I was trying hard, bro. Like shit. And like all of a sudden, it felt constantly like I had a hand squeezing my neck, and it would always stop my Kundalini, and then something would always happen in my stomach. And it was weird, and I didn't understand what was happening at the time. And it was not the types of issues that I had been finding during my Kundalini yoga sessions at home. It's like at home, typically, like if there was a stuck emotion, like you'd have to work through it a bit, you'd have to feel it out, but it wouldn't be like actively fighting you. Like it would be going with the Kundalini. Even if there was a lot to unpack, it would be going with the Kundalini. But during that day, it felt like literally like my body was fighting the Kundalini. Like my throat was choking it to stop it, and my stomach was always like popping the band out and shit. And this was new, and I didn't understand it at the time. It felt like in my head like a spiritual attack is the words that I used at the time. A full-blown spiritual attack. And ever since that day, shit has been tough. Because all of the things that, like, all of the skills, all of the trust, and all of the shit that I had built up between me and my higher self, it was like the relationship between us felt like it was like getting pulled apart and deteriorated, because this either new sacral chakra or my sacral chakra after it had been like disillusioned because of an ego blow or something like that. Yeah, it like resulted in like this massive stress and this massive amount of like fog on my insides. It was like it felt like reactive stress. Like it didn't feel like stress that was a result on like things that I was observing in the present moment. It always felt like stress that would like get fed through me based on anything that the thing could find to stress about. And it was like no stressor could be quelled once I soothed if I soothed the thing that was creating stress for my sacral chakra at the time, it would find a new thing to be stressed about. Immediately it would find I'm getting fucking plugged up here. Immediately it would find a new thing to get stressed out about. I guess that means I'm going in a direction. So like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, this is my victim narrative. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if y'all can see it coming out and shit, but like, fucking, like, yeah, fucking parted, but fucking, yeah, like, and like maybe, like, this is a very fair shot. However, and like, yeah, like, I'm saying sitting here, like, all of the struggle that I went through the last year was like my parents and like people around me's fault, and not my fault. and that like everything that has happened in the last 2 months has been because of 5 other people abusing me, and I didn't do anything wrong or deserve it karmically. And it's like, yeah, like my ego will literally tell me things like, yeah, but it's true though. And it's like, it's definitely not complete bullshit. For sure. It's not complete bullshit. It's just not balanced. Like, it can't be quite like that. I doubt it. I very much doubt it. Because think about how karma works. What is karma? What is karma? Karma is this. I'll do it again. Throw something up, it comes back down. Bounce ball off the ground, comes back up. What goes up must come down. It's cause and effect. This all karma is cause and effect. And so, if this is the effect that I had been experiencing for the past fat minute, right? Like, you know what I mean? And I don't think that's necessarily anything to like freak out about internally there. Because like this exact scenario with the breakdown and with the, you know, the disillusionment and with the, you know, the severe ego deaths, like, yeah. Like, yeah. It's happened many times. It's happened many times. And it's always a blessing in disguise. Because it's always like dead weight. Like dead wood being burned off when this happens. For new saplings to grow. Like making room for new saplings to grow. And it's always hard because you always have to like experience the dead wood getting burned off. And it's like, if that dead wood is part of your tree of life, it's like quite painful. But it's worth it. It's like good karma in disguise, kind of. Or maybe more like his wave. Something like that. And yeah. And yeah, the balanced perspective that I arrived at was like that chakra swapping is a thing. Chakra swapping is a thing. And I'm pretty sure, like, the way that I saw what happened on the 4th, pretty sure it was like that. However, like, the things that I did afterward to handle it. See, I didn't understand that reassuring a flared-up BPD ego, giving it reassurances and feeding into the doubts with your interaction and your engagement, actually only feeds it. It only feeds it. The only way to really overcome it is to kind of just, like, ignore it. Straight up. Ignore it. And that's not easy to do, especially if you love yourself. It's like hearing yourself fucking freak the fuck out like that and getting all worked up about shit. It's like it breaks your heart. And it's like, dude, like, yeah. And it's like, yeah. But I don't want to just give my ego whatever my ego wants. I want my ego to be healthy. And I want to provide like a good life for my ego and for me. And sometimes that means tough love, right? Like it can't always just be like, yeah, like coddling. And like, yeah, you don't need to be coddled. You're stronger than that. Yeah, and like it. Yeah, and like I don't know, like I've just been like surfing through this, and like kind of, yeah, like yeah, yeah, okay. I don't know. I realized that there was all this shit. There was all this shit that I had in my head. There was all this shit that like I felt like I needed, or like at least that I wanted, that I didn't have right here, right now. A lot of stuff that I imagined in the past, and a lot of stuff that, like, not imagined in the past, but, like, aspects of myself, skills, ease of doing certain things. Things like music with Ableton, and, you know, free reign to be loud, and, like, I guess that competition, too. And, like, autonomy. And, like, yeah, I don't know. And, like, I still have that, but, like, I don't know, there was a bunch of shit, I made a giant fucking thing, of stuff that I wanted, like, that my ego wants me to fix or change, that it couldn't accept about the right here, right now. And I kind of remembered, I guess, or I didn't remember, my higher self told me. I'm not gonna try and claim that, like, this wisdom that I was given. Yes. And, what? Hello? Cheers. And, and yeah, like, yeah, essentially, like, kind of where I was, like, trying to lead myself to, like, understand was like, the only things that stop you from being content in the present moment are like the things that you can come up with that you're lacking in the present moment. That's only, like, that's all it ever is. That's all it ever is. It always like seems like the ego will come up with like very convincing reasons, and some of them seem extremely convincing. Why this needs to change, that needs to change, why you gotta like, get up and go do this, or you gotta stop doing that, or whatever whatever it might be. Whatever it might be. It is always like that feeling itself that gets in the way. Never like what the change needs to be. Never like the object of the change. It's never that. It's always the feeling that things need to change and then giving into it. So like, yeah, I was unable to be present. I was unable to like sit with myself. I was unable to like, yeah, to accept myself. Because I had like convinced myself essentially that all of my parts were like not my parts. And I was constantly trying to give shit back, and like I couldn't find the one that was like supposed to be underneath all that. Because there wasn't anything underneath that. And like I essentially like gaslit myself out of being able to like heal myself in any kind of way. Because I got myself into this catatonic type mental state where it was like, well, it's not even me up in there anyway, so like what am I gonna put any effort towards it for? And like it's quite conditional, you know? It's like, yeah, it's quite conditionally loving. And like, yeah, like no matter what, no matter whose part it is, even if I don't want anyone else's parts up on my insides, if somebody else has fucking forced one of their parts up in my insides and fucking swapped one of mine out, it's still like part of the self. Like part of the self. It's still part of the self. And so it's still inherently just as like lovable as I am. And so like that literally is what got me through. Like anytime this would happen in my past, like anytime I would lose parts of me and like I'd feel like there was like some new fucking person on my insides, it'd always be once I decide to like make that thing my friend. I say that thing because it's been many different things. It's always like parts from other people, of course. It's never what I want to be happening, man. And yeah, every time you start treating it like it's your friend, and you start treating it like it's you, even if it don't act like you, and even if, yeah, anytime you start treating it like it's you and start loving it anyway, it's like real you can actually like reemerge then. And like the imposter chakra can get fucking sent back to wherever the fuck it came from. And you can only get there through love. You can't get there through force. You can't get there through hatred. You can't get there through animosity. You can't get there through bitterness. Because if you're dwelling on all that shit, you're essentially just continuing to feed whoever threw that shit at you. You're essentially continuing to feed them and not actually helping yourself in any kind of way. And there's always the whole rest of yourself. Even if one part's been fucking swapped out, or two, or however many fucking it might be, there's still like a rest of yourself that needs to continue. It needs to keep living. And it's like the self in me, like the capital S self, the self, it doesn't change. It never has. It never will. It's the same in all of us. It's only one self. And so I understand that like if I identify with that part of me, like any ways in which my body might oscillate, it's like I need to be emotionally detached anyway. And like yeah, I was going about it in completely the wrong way. I was going about it with all my fucking weapons ready and shit. Like I was ready to fight this thing. I was ready to fucking fight this thing. And it's never been what's done good things for me in the past. Like fighting and like resisting and all this shit. Essentially, like once I decide that whatever is going on, whatever way Om happens to be oscillating in front of me, whenever I do happen to find myself, whatever way that happens to be is okay. It's always a yin yang, right? It's always all the dark and all the light at once. And it's only ever like narrowing of my own perception that stops me from being able to see that. And so if I feel like somebody's doing this shit to me, and if whatever the fuck, like straight up, gotta let go of the bitterness, gotta let go of the blame, the resentment, the bitterness, the etc. And I would say it's best to let go of this idea that there's some parts of your insides that are you, and there's some parts that aren't. Because, as you know, you the person inside this body, yeah, as you this person knows, you don't want nobody else's shit up inside you. You want real you, whatever the fuck that might be, you want real you. And so, it's like kind of a pain in the ass whenever that shit does happen. However, when it does, if it does again, which hopefully not, but if it does anymore, the way is not to dwell on that, like, at all. The way is to keep doing whatever it is you typically be doing, even if it doesn't go well. Like, even if it's hard to meditate, even if it's hard to do the Kundalini yoga, even if it's hard to do the alignments, even if it's hard to make music, even if it's hard to do X, Y, and Z, keep doing those things. Work with the part that you got. And the closer to awareness you get, the faster you'll have real you back. And you'll have spread some love along the way. It's like a win-win. And so, anytime I notice that, or anytime I feel like that on the inside, I think the way forward is to essentially treat it, whatever that part is, in whatever way it might manifest, to treat it as me. And to continue living without sending my attention into any, other person or into any other situation and getting bogged down in that shit. Staying present and working with the cards that I'm dealt, essentially. And not dwelling on previous hands of cards that I had been dealt that I liked a whole lot better because they were the ones that I had been fucking born with. But yeah, hey. I mean, dude, eventually we gonna die. Can't cling to it forever and shit. I would say, the metaphor that is in that one fucking Buddha documentary on YouTube that I got the freaking song from by Michael Bacon. Very much recommend that documentary for y'all, by the way. If y'all haven't seen it, it's just called The Buddha, I think. And it's like a PBS documentary. If you look it up on YouTube, it's the first fucking video, if not the second. But yeah, wonderful fucking video. Oh, it's just wonderful. And in that video, I kind of understand. Oh fuck, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, essentially, yeah. 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 Just treat it like it's you on the inside. Be its friend. Treat it like it's all you. Don't you know? It's don't treat you better than everything else and then need it to be you on the inside to give you that kind of treatment. Treat everything like that. This is the way. Love everything. Know that you are everything without having to eat everything. Without having to claim any one bit of it. Know yourself to be everything. And love everything as such. And this is the way. The way isn't picking your favorite parts. Because as soon as you got your favorite parts picked out, spirit, or at least this is what I'm seeing, yo. Yeah, the universe will basically snatch them bits right the fuck up as soon as possible.